With Disney now being over 100 years old and having produced over 60 movies as part of their animated canon, I think it's time we look back at some of the movies that unfortunately did not make it to completion. Some of these we'll examine today made it decently far into production, only to have concepts change into completely different movies altogether. These 4 movies we're discussing today were all cancelled within the past 25 years. Some are quite interesting, while others seem like a crime that they were cancelled to begin with. But without further ado, let's get into it.
And it is called Gigantic.
First up is probably the most well known for being the most recent, Gigantic. The movie was based on the Jack and the Beanstalk story, planned as a 3D animated musical comedy, directed by Nathan Greeno and Meg LaFauve. It was set to be Disney's 59th animated feature as part of their Disney canon. However, it met its unfortunate demise and got cancelled. The plot of the movie was set in Spain during the Exploration Age and follows the titular character Jack, who discovers a world in the clouds, and befriends a giant girl named Inma, who's over 60 feet tall despite still being a child. She's described as a feisty and hard to control type of kid, treating Jack more like a doll to play with rather than an actual person. There is also an antagonist known as the Storm of Giants, who apparently stand over 120 feet tall, but not much else is known about them, or the rest of the movie. But I'm guessing you can probably figure it out if you know the Jack and the Beanstalk story. So what exactly happened? Well, after the film was announced in 2015, it seemed to garner a lot of good help, getting both Kristen and Robert Lopez to write the music, the same two who wrote the music for Frozen. However, after many years, more and different people signed on to the project, but not much progress was shown. In spring of 2017, Disney announced that the release date of the film was pushed back to November of 2020, from its previous date of November 2018, but then it was shelved altogether, with Raya and the Last Dragon taking its place. According to The Hollywood Reporter, there were some creative differences in the film, leading to uncertainty about how to proceed. Walt Disney and Pixar Animation Studios president Ed Catmull stated, "It's impossible to know when we begin a project how the creative process will unfold. And sometimes, no matter how much we love the idea or how much heart goes into it, we find that it just isn't working." He continued, "With Gigantic, we've come to that point, and although it's a difficult decision, we are ending active development for now. We are focusing our energies on another project that has been in the works, which we'll be sharing more about soon, now set for Thanksgiving of 2020. This project, of course, ended up becoming Raya, and Gigantic remains in limbo. Perhaps one day it will come back, or it may never return. There's not much we can do except wait and hope for the best." But now that Zootopia reference doesn't make any sense.
All your favorite movies. I got movies that haven't even been released yet.
King of the Elves was a film based on the story by Philip K. Dick, set to be directed by Aaron Blaise and Robert Walker. Originally set for a 2012 release, it was apparently shelved back in 2009. However, the following year, it was reported that the film was back in development and now being directed by Chris Williams. Supposedly, the production was doing well enough to rival Frozen's release date back in 2013. However, the production came to a halt due to story problems, and Chris helping on other films at the time. The story follows a band of elves and a dwarf living in modern-day Mississippi who decided to name a human named Calder their king after he saves them from an evil troll. The movie was set to be a 3D animated movie, but it couldn't get its story adaptation on a clear path. It seems they wanted to take liberties from the original story, which happens often in book-to-movie adaptations. Though it doesn't always make sense since the story is all right there, but I suppose they wanted to be appropriate for Disney audiences, avoiding anything too dark. From what I'm seeing of this story, there were going to be a lot of battles that involved casualties, so I'm not sure how much of it would have made it into the movie. The last of the movie's development was in the fall of 2016, where Chris Williams decided that this was just not the film he wanted to make. I'm not exactly sure if anything got animated, but at the very least, we get this cool concept art. The movie certainly had a ton of potential, but just could not be. This one still has a possible future, but as of right now, it's just another film that was shelved.
Great big heroes! What do you say, men? All for one
and 2 for team.
The Search for Mickey Mouse was planned as a movie to be released in honor of Mickey Mouse's 75th anniversary in 2002. Not much info around the movie was known, and the time came and went with nothing coming of it. Then, in 2005, the movie was announced to be released in 2012, as Disney's 50th animated feature. Of course, we know that did not happen, and Tangled became the 50th animated movie. The plot of the movie would have been Mickey Mouse himself being kidnapped by some unknown force, leaving Minnie to seek help from Basil of Baker Street, from the Great Mouse Detective, to investigate. Along the way, he and, I'm assuming, Minnie and others encounter other Disney animated characters part of the Disney canon, who I assume help along the journey. It would essentially have been a love letter not only to Mickey himself, but all of Disney and their animated movies. Now, the reason why it was cancelled was because the project suffered from script problems, along with multiple cameos from other Disney characters being a little too complex. Which I think is a weird excuse because they were literally airing The House of Mouse, a show that literally has almost every Disney character under the sun. But having like a dozen characters, I guess that was too much for a full movie. I don't know, it seemed like it was doable. Even now I think it could be done very well. Who knows, maybe it can be revived. It's got loads of potential for sure. I also find it kind of odd that there's no clips or even any concept art at all, at least what I can find. Hopefully one day we can see a glimmer of what might have been. Also, sadly, around this time of its original release date, it got scrapped, and Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, the Three Musketeers, took its place.
Buddy, all for one and one for all.
Hair. And second, I don't believe in magic.
How about we check a different version of a film with Rapunzel Unbraided, which was a version of Tangled before being drastically overhauled into what we got to see today. The film originally was going to be directed by Glenn Keane, and the film was intended to mirror Disney's older fairy tales, although that kind of eventually changed. This version of the movie had an evil witch named Lucretia, who despised fairy tale endings, setting a plot to change all of that. While we meet our protagonists in modern-day San Francisco, named Claire and Vince, two teenagers who are complete opposites of each other and cannot stand one another. Claire is a fashion-obsessed teen who always cares about how she looks, while Vince is a stocky and rude pizza delivery boy on hard times. The two of them argue so much they end up getting the attention of Lucretia in the fairy tale world. She takes both Rapunzel and her prince Beau and transforms them into a squirrel and a dog, while both Claire and Vince are set to fill their roles. They eventually team up with Rapunzel and Beau to take down Lucretia and return to their homes. The original concept of making a Rapunzel movie started in 1996, but wasn't officially pitched until 2001, where it was approved and actually requested to be a computer animated film. Now, the film we got ended up being that, but back then 3D animation was still coming into its own. The film was set with the release date of 2007, but with the concept, Keane thought a lot more sincerity could be gotten from the story. In 2005, the film was pushed back to a release date of 2009, after the purchase of Pixar in 2006. Ed Catmull, who was put in charge of the studio, made the decision to restart the project. Glenn eventually dropped out of the film due to other commitments and was replaced by Nathan Greeno and Byron Howard, who eventually made it into the film of Tangled we got. So this wasn't exactly cancelled, but it was progressively pushed more into what we know now until it stuck. I would definitely like to see as much as possible of what was made for the original film, like if there's more clips and concept art. I always find it interesting what a movie turns into and think of what could have been. And if the movie stayed its original self, would it have been good? And would have people liked it at all? Or would it have aged horribly? And those are 4 different Disney movies that were cancelled, all due to different reasons of creativity not being able to make certain story elements work, or just feeling that the initial idea might sound good on paper, but not so much in actual fruition. Which ones have you heard of before? Do you hope that these movies can possibly come back in some shape or form? Let me know if you want me to cover more cancelled Disney movies, or just other animated movies in general.